Hi everyone, my name is Sarah. I'm one of the tutors here at Eng Lang Pro, and today we're going to be talking about some key terminology and changes to the study design. Really understanding this meta language and all of these changes and being able to incorporate them in your writing is very important. It's one of the things that set the foundation for me and ultimately allowed me to get a Raw 48 study score when I did English language last year. And all of us here at Eng Lang Pro are committed to helping you achieve whatever your goals may be in the subject. So let's jump right into what we're going to be talking about today. So there's two changes that some students are finding a bit confusing at the moment, and that's completely understandable. There's a bit of ambiguity about them. And one of them is the addition of tenor, and the other one is the change to the functions. So tenor is something that's a little bit, it's very different, it's very new, and the functions have become much more specific now, as opposed to what they were before. They were much broader. You can kind of make up your own functions, but now they have a specific list of functions for us to use. And so we're going to go through them today and how you can kind of understand them and how you can really include them in your writing as well. So let's talk about tenor first. What even is tenor? So put simply, tenor is the relationship between two participants in a conversation. And tenor can be influenced by a number of different things, and we're going to talk about them today. But before we actually talk about what influences tenor, let's talk about how you can even describe tenor. What's the kind of language that we're going to use when we are including a discussion of tenor in our ACs or SAQs or essays? So the two most basic ways of describing tenor are a close tenor and a distant tenor. So they kind of exist on a continuum and they're influenced by a range of different factors, like I said before. But if you want to be more specific in your analysis and also your meta language, you can say things like reassuring tenor or authoritative tenor, or friendly tenor, or professional tenor. And obviously all of these are going to be influenced by how close two participants are, or the intentions of the speakers, or even the roles of the speakers in the conversation. Now, a little bit of a misconception, a bit of a confusion that some students may have is that tenor is replacing register, and that is not the case. Rather, tenor is actually, it can be influenced by register. And let me explain exactly how this may happen. Imagine you're talking to your best friend in the whole world, right? The person that you tell everything to, the person that you don't care, how you speak to them, they're not going to judge you. You're probably going to speak to them in a very informal register. You might have slang that you two use. You might, talk about topics that you might not tell anybody else. The kinds of jokes you make, the kind of language you use is going to be very relaxed, very informal, very casual, very friendly. And because of that, the social distance between you two is very small. There's basically none, right? You feel very close to the person. You feel you can tell them anything, and you feel comfortable with them. And because of that, the tenor that you create with them is close. It's very close, but it's also friendly and it's also very casual. So that's kind of a way of explaining how we can include a discussion of tenor even in our everyday lives. And when you understand that, it becomes easier when you look at texts to identify the tenor between two participants by just identifying their relationship first. Now, the other side of that is also true. Like if you're talking to a boss or your employer, talking to a teacher, someone that has authority over you, you're obviously going to talk to them with more respect, with more care for your language and more formality. So it's going to be a bit more formal in its register. And because of that, the social distance between you two is going to be a little bit further apart because you're trying to maintain that respect, you're trying to maintain that boundary, and you're trying to just remain professional, and you're just trying to get done what you want to get done. It might just be, have you sent that email to this person? Have you finished this task? Have you, completed this contract? It's very professional. It's very on the surface. There isn't really a need or an intention to get any deeper than just professional. And because of that, the social distance between you and your employer or your boss, your teacher, is going to be a bit greater. And because of that, not only is it distant, but it's also professional, it's also respectful, and it's much less casual. And so that should kind of give you an understanding of how register can influence tenor and how they actually go hand in hand. So, all throughout English language, register is a really big deal. As you'll come to understand, probably already do understand. You need to address them in your ACs, and also when reading an essay Q text, you might need to identify that there as well. So keep that in mind, that tenor is not replacing register, it actually is influenced by it, and there's still two very important things that you have to grapple with in your writing. So how and where do you include a discussion of tenor? Now, the two main places where you can kind of discuss tenor very specifically is in SAQ and AC. You might still talk about it in your essays, but obviously it's not like it's one of those things you have to talk about. But in SAQ and AC, you might get asked about an SAQ, and in AC, you're going to have to address it. So in SAQ, they're probably going to guide you. They're most probably going to guide you to discuss tenor. They'll probably ask you a question specifically about tenor, and they'll probably ask you to link it to something as well, whether that's register or whether that's, positive or negative politeness, whether it's face needs. They'll ask you to link it to something and analyze it that way. And in AC, one of the ways which I found the discussion of tenor to making that discussion easiest for me was linking it to register, because that really helped me to make that connection and to make it relevant to the rest of the text or conversation, the transcript, because it helps you to understand as well what the aspirations of the speakers are. And from that, you can deduce the relationship, how close they are, and also then the tenor. So I made a bit of a mind map here for you that might help you kind of visualize how tenor is connected to a range of different things. We have the big five here: social distance, relationships, register, face needs, and politeness strategies. And we've talked here about social distance, relationships, and register already. Face needs and politeness strategies are also two very important things. There was actually a question that we're going to look at later on the exam last year. And if you need any assistance with understanding face needs and politeness strategies, we do have a video on that as well. So have a look if you need some help. But this should kind of show you that tenor can be talked about in so many different ways and linked to so many different things as well. And it should make it a little bit less confusing for you, because you can have so many robust discussions about tenor in your ACs or your SAQ responses just by linking them to all these, not all of them, but some of these factors. So yeah. Now let's look at an example from the 2024 exam section A. This was question 3, so this is actually on my exam. Identify one example of a politeness strategy used in this interaction and justify how it influences the tenor between the participants. So if we have a look at the text right here, it's actually an interview between two people. It's between Sam Kozlowski and also Dylan Olcott, and he is a Paralympian, I believe. Yeah, he's a Paralympian. And this conversation is basically between those two about his accomplishments, about what he's done, and also it kind of aims to spread some awareness. And the question asked us, as we saw before, about a politeness strategy that is used and how that reflects the tenor. Now, reading the text, the example that I actually used when I responded to this text was line 2 over here. Thanks for joining us at the TDA offices this morning. It's just Kozlowski thanking Dylan for being there. It's appealing to his positive face needs. It's actually a positive politeness strategy, because it's really allowing Kozlowski to express his gratitude. It's allowing Kozlowski to show him that he appreciates Dylan taking his time out to be there. And because of that, the kind of tenor that it creates, it's very close, it's very friendly and appreciative and grateful. So that's kind of how you can frame a discussion of tenor and how you can link it to something such as a politeness strategy, as the question asks. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a bit of an example of how we can discuss tenor. Now, moving on to function and how this has kind of changed. In the new study design, function is a little bit more specific. It's a bit more narrow than what it used to be before. In the old one, you can kind of just say things like to inform or to entertain or to persuade. But we have a set of 6 functions now that we've been given to us, and we have to use them in our writing and be specific as well. And these are Jacobson's functions of language. Basically, These 6 functions are going to apply to your texts, and you have to kind of identify them yourself. So the first function, that's kind of the most common one, is a referential function. This is when a text conveys information. So it's what you would say is to inform in the old SD, but now it's the referential function. The text serves a referential function. The text achieves a referential function. And an example of this is, I study English language. This statement conveys that information. It says to the person listening that you study English language. And that's just basically what referential function is. And so if you have a text that is just, spewing out a bunch of information, a bunch of statements, then that text, you could say, would achieve the referential function. The next one is the connotative function. Now, this one is kind of like to persuade, but not really, because it's kind of trying to elicit an action. It's giving a command or encouraging an action in the person or the reader that's listening or reading the text or the conversation. So an example of that can be, please close the door. It could be, please come here, or please stop doing that. All of these are actions, or they encourage an action, or they're commands, right? Or in a text, for instance, it could be a bit different. It might not be as explicit. It might not be as obvious. It might not be author actually telling us to do something. It could just be a call to action that encourages readers or listeners to donate or to create their own action. So a connotative function is often used in those things, in those texts or those speeches that sort of raise awareness or give information on certain organizations. And when a emotive function is exactly what it sounds like, it indicates emotion or feeling. Quite simple there, something like, I love surfing. That's an emotive, it achieves the emotive function. It allows the reader, the writer or the speaker to indicate how they feel about a certain thing, if they like it, they don't like it. That's what the emotive function is. The emphatic function is actually something that many of us achieve in our daily conversations through small talk, for instance. Things like, isn't it lovely today? It really just establishes like a relationship, and it establishes a connection between two speakers or a reader, which is really it's a bit shallow, but it just aims to be friendly. It aims to just create like an introduction to a relationship. Now, these bottom two, the metalinguistic function and the poetic function, I haven't seen them yet. I don't think they are as common, but it's very important to still know them because they could literally do anything. VCAR could throw a curveball at us and give us a poem maybe. I doubt it, but you never know. So metalinguistic function is when a text or a conversation is centered around the actual language. So for instance, if I'm talking to someone and I say, what does emphatic mean? What does emotive mean? What is the connotative function? Or what is a declarative sentence? It's about the actual language. And so that text or that conversation would achieve the metalinguistic function. And then finally, the poetic function is focused on the aesthetics of language. It's about poetry, or it's about, those pieces of writing that aim to kind of capitalize off of how beautiful a certain language feature is. And an example of this is to be or not to be. It doesn't really have, too much substance on the surface, but you can see that it's an intentional choice here to kind of make them rhyme, to kind of make them a question, and there's much more of a focus on how it looks and how it sounds rather than what it actually means. So hopefully you've learned something now about tenor and the functions of language, and hopefully it's a bit less confusing for you. Like I did say before, we do have a video on politeness strategies and face needs. So if you want to brush up on that knowledge, you can absolutely go take a look at that. Other than that, good luck with English language, and thank you for putting the effort and watching this video and educating yourself. Bye-bye.